Everyone, I am Shekhar Bonu, Director General, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, which we call in short form as DMEO. Uh, we are placed headquartered in Niti Aayog, Government of India. I'll be the moderator for this session on strengthening of monitoring and evaluation systems experiences from India and South Africa. To begin with, I would really like to congratulate JPAL and its partners for successfully organizing the first edition of the Glocal last year. I thank them also for inviting DMEO to organize sessions last year. And this year we are organizing 4 of them. This is the second in that series. I welcome all the audience joining from across the globe. We have a very experienced panel who have all been part of government in building strong monitoring and evaluation systems in India and South Africa. I welcome our 4 esteemed panelists, Dr. Shalini Rajneesh, Dr. Chaya Degonkar, Sri Amod Kumar, and Professor Ian Goldman. We are going through truly unprecedented times. COVID-19 has unleashed once-in-a-century health crisis, along with sharp and synchronous slowing down of economic growth. Across the country, across the world, the governments are taking extraordinary monetary, fiscal measures and other measures to address both health and economic crisis induced by COVID. Among others, the additional public expenditure due to COVID-induced crisis is leading to accumulation of sizable public debt. Improving public expenditure to achieve desired outcomes effectively and efficiently is now more acutely felt than ever. In India, more than 40 trillion rupees, around $500 billion, are spent combinedly by central and state government on infrastructure, social development, and social protection initiatives. Both the central and state governments have undertaken many steps to strengthen monitoring and evaluation systems to achieve desired outcomes and generate data and evidence for better program management and policies, especially leveraging technology and strengthening institutions. We at DMEO, as the apex national institution, support the government with outcome budget and track outputs and outcomes for around 600 central sector and centrally sponsored schemes. We have also recently completed evaluations of 120 odd centrally sponsored schemes. These evaluation reports are now being used to determine the continuation or modification of these schemes. In these evaluations, DMEO has followed mixed method, RACI framework. DMEO is strongly committed to building M&E ecosystems across the country through partnerships. We have, especially with state governments, we have partnerships with the JPAL, 3IE, World Food Program, UNICEF, and many national institutes of eminence. This session is in that direction of learning best practices from different and taking them to scale. In this session, we will discuss efforts made by states of Karnataka and Uttar Pradesh in institutionalizing strong M&E systems. This session will also draw learnings from South Africa. I hope the session will be of value to M&E and public policy practitioners. Before we go any further, I would like to run through the housekeeping rules. We'll start with a brief opening remarks from each of the panelists and have discussion which I will facilitate. Then we will have audience questions. This is a webinar format, so the chat is disabled, but we'll take all questions through the Q&A module. Please type in your questions with the name and organization name so that we can take them up seamlessly. We will respond through email in case we are unable to take your questions due to paucity of time. Now, let's move to opening remarks. I would first like to invite Dr. Shalini Rajneesh, who is our first panelist. She is the Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Planning, Program Monitoring and Statistics, Government of Karnataka. Dr. Rajneesh is an IAS Indian Administrative Officer from 1989 batch. She has more than 3 decades of development experience, both at the Government of India and state government levels in education, health, social inclusion, rural development, panchayat raj, area development, women and child development, empowering women. She has won a number of awards for her public service, including National E-Governance Award, Google Innovation Award. She has a PhD from Mangalore University, MBA from La Trobe University in Australia, and she has a number of publications and a very, very strong presence in TV, radio, YouTube, and newspapers, where she passionately challenges development issues. With this, floor is yours, Dr. Shalini.
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. I'm a very good evening to all of you, and I'll quickly talk about the Karnataka model. I think the PPT can be shared on the screen. I'm very proud to say that Karnataka is ranking #1 in India Innovation Index. It is 6th in SDG India Index, with front runner in 11 SDGs out of 17. We are 3rd in Good Governance Index, and our per capita income is 28% above the national average. To strengthen monitoring and evaluation system, we have developed Avalokana, an IT-based integrated platform for online monitoring of data from the taluk level up to the state level for all the 1,863 schemes, 39 departments, 140 line departments, including all the SDG priority indicators. We have also set up a Center for Open Data Research for Big Data Analytics in partnership with IIT Bangalore and Public Affairs Center, Bangalore. We are one of the first states to formulate Karnataka evaluation policy as early as 2000. And we set up an independent Karnataka Evaluation Authority in 2011. We are using the outcomes of these evaluation studies to improve the program design and delivery of various schemes. And we are very happy to see that the recommendations made by the authority are very openly welcomed, and changes are immediately made by the respective departments. I'm also very happy to share that in this year's budget announcement, Honorable Chief Minister declared that all projects of Karnataka which are more than 100 crores will be evaluated mandatorily. And in this ambit, we get 272 schemes which actually have 88% of the funds that are allocated in the budget. Over to you, Dr. Chaya.
Yeah, before Chayaji, you come in, I will take this opportunity to also introduce you.
Okay.
Dr. Chaya Devgaonkar is the Additional Chief Evaluation Officer at the Karnataka Evaluation Authority in the Department of Planning, Government of Karnataka. Earlier, she was Dean, Faculty of Social Science, and Professor and Head of Department of Economics and Women's Studies at Gulbarga University in Karnataka. Dr. Chaya has a number of publications to her credit and regularly invited as expert on evaluation in India. She has supervised a number of rigorous evaluations and has a lot to contribute to evaluation in this country. Dr. Chaya.
Thank you, sir. I'm just presenting before you that how at a subnational level, like a state, Karnataka, a well-built institutionalization system of monitoring and evaluation is built up. Now, taking forward the things from Dr. Shalini, that I say that Karnataka Evaluation Authority was established in 2011, and the society, it is an independent society registered under Societies Act in Karnataka, and we find that it has a very good complete institutionalized structure. We have a general body that is chaired by the ACS and Development Commissioner with 16 members, and I must say that it includes evaluation experts also in the general body. Then we have for day-to-day affairs, we have a governing body chaired by the ACS planning with the evaluation experts. 13 members are there. Then we have various technical committees. Now we have a technical committee that looks into all the technical aspects of our evaluation, right from the, we can say, terms of reference for the study till the report is finalized. We have the assistance and the expertise from the technical committee, which includes institutional members from the various academic institutions, and also the evaluation experts in the technical committee, along with the members from the department. Then we have a tender evaluation committee also, which is also a committee of experts that helps in the evaluation of the various tenders that are called for different studies. Then we have a empanelment committee that looks into the empanelment of different organizations to KEA. Then we have a sampling committee that decides the sampling structure and the mode, as well as the selection at various stages in the various studies. So we have different expert committees with us. Then we have empaneled organizations who participate in our evaluation studies. There are around 34 to 35 evaluation organizations. I'm very proud to say that we have many national and international organizations like KPMG, PwC, CRISIL, and others working with us. And we have a set of independent assessors who look into the evaluation reports, which are more or less practitioners. Then in addition to that, we have subject experts, which are 40 in number. These are drawn from various academic institutions all over the country, and even some international institutions. For example, Haas School of Business at University of California is also an expertise with Karnataka Evaluation Authority. We have partnerships with state, national, and international universities and research institutions for evaluation. And we have a very transparent process of evaluation, right from the TOR till the final report. We present the request for proposal through e-procurement, and we use the QC-based method for evaluation of the tenders with a technical weightage of 80 and the financial weightage of 20. And then up till now, Karnataka Evaluation Authority has completed from 2011 with the mandate of 30 studies in general per year within the authority. We have 177 studies completed, and I'm very much proud that 115 studies action taken reports are received. Some of the very recent studies around 25 or 30, for which we are waiting for the action taken reports. Because of the pandemic, the actions are delayed in that case. And I must say that we have very strong future plans that we would like to develop the in-house capacity, take up quick evaluation surveys, and develop the methodology based on more scientific analysis of the field evidence, develop some real-time data collection at the field level, and also capacity building of national with the collaboration with national and international institutions and academic institutions. We are partnering with them for evaluation studies also, and we also would like to have dialogue with the national international institutions like 3IE and JESPAL and all for building up the evaluation system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajneesh, as well as Dr. Chaya, for explaining in detail both the monitoring side as well as evaluation side of progress that state government of Karnataka has done. For global audience, Karnataka has the capital of Karnataka, Bangalore, is the Silicon Valley of India, and the government has the state government has fully leveraged that advantage and has one of the best digitized monitoring systems. When it comes to evaluation, the institutionalization of evaluation probably in Karnataka is the gold standard as far as India is concerned. Thank you both for very in detail elaborating it. With this, we'll come to our second eminent panelist. Amod Kumar is the Principal Secretary Planning, Government of Karnataka, Government of Uttar Pradesh, sorry, the most populated state in India with over 230 million population. Amod is from 1995 batch of Indian Administrative Services. Over the past more than 25 years of service, Amod has worked in diverse areas of development administration, including public policy, e-governance, education, health, and family welfare. He has also he received, he has done fantastic work and received awards from United Nations Public Services Award, Golden Icon Award, and E-Governance Champion Award, and Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration, which is like a Nobel Prize for public administrators in India. He has a MTech and BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and an MPA from Harvard Kennedy School. With this, floor is yours, Amod.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. And it is so good to be here to see the leader presenting. So obviously Karnataka, as we consider to be gold standard in India, and we try to learn as much from them as possible. So I'll be very brief, and I'll first give the background of the evaluation and monitoring in Uttar Pradesh. So UP was a very early starter. We set up the evaluation division in the planning department in UP as way back as in 1965. So roughly 56 years back. But then maybe we were early starters, but somehow we were not the quick movers or fast movers. So and presently we have the sanction strength of 76 in that evaluation division, which looks after this work, but that's the sanction strength. But most of the positions are not filled. And so we are trying to fill them up as fast as possible. The system here is that the departments request this evaluation division, and based on the requests found, which come from different departments, there is a high level committee which decides which evaluations to be conducted during the year. So in the last 50, 60 years, there have been 818 evaluation studies, 16 quick assessment studies. And this division also conducts inspections and verification of some data, sometimes if desired by those departments. So roughly 67 such inspections have been carried on. Government of UP firmly believes, I think this realization has dawned upon them slowly and gradually, but at least today I see that the leadership believes that it is indeed an important tool in the hands of the government to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the expenditure, and that brings maximum return on investment. So to say, for every rupee invested in evaluation, you get at least 10 rupees back in terms of efficiency of those schemes. So with that kind of a background, the future plans in UP, as I already told, there is an understanding that not only monitoring and evaluation, training of the personnel in that scheme and in that department, and investment in IT tools, MIS, and all that. So all these three things bring at least 10 times return in terms of efficiency. So if you spend 111, then you get for 3% expenditure of that scheme, you get 30% return on efficiency. The other thing which we plan to do is definitely to learn from other states, whether not only from other states, but from other countries also, so that we can leapfrog and we can bridge this development. So if Karnataka brought evaluation policy in 2000 and it created authority in 2011, we'll try to do that as quickly as possible on both the things. Now, what has been so far is that the decision which schemes to evaluate, how to evaluate, when to evaluate have been person centric. Like the principal secretary planning or the chief secretary will decide, and suppose somebody says that this also has to be done, then it will be done, something like that. So there has been, although there has been one system, but then ad hocism has also been there. So what we are trying to do is to create a formal system, and in that we have done this analysis that we have about 623 schemes in states in the state where the expenditure, annual expenditure, is more than 100 crores. So to begin with, we plan to budget 1% of that annual expenditure at least on monitoring and evaluation, so that we can improve the efficiency. The other thing which we are consciously trying to do is to build, to do some advocacy and to build an atmosphere where we are able to sensitize senior politicians, that is the chief minister and the ministers and the members of the legislative assembly, about the importance of MNE. Because otherwise, generally, this being our country being a democracy, the politicians normally believe in the principle of seeing is believing. So they would rather like to spend the money on bridges, roads, structures which can be seen. We are trying to tell them that this expenditure is not seen, but it will bring better efficiency, so you'll be able to build more of them and do deliver more output. So that we are consciously trying to do. The other thing is that right now it is kind of a post-mortem kind of a thing. So we are trying to move from the post-mortem approach to proactive approach. That is, while designing only a scheme, we must go through the past evaluations done by us as well as by others, so that it is actually an evidence policy. There is a big challenge there that we do not have enough time when we are formulating a new policy to have that kind of evidence-based policy, but within the given limits of the time. And that is why, because the challenge is of the time, because whenever a chief minister or a minister decides that I have to launch this scheme, they say, oh, I have to do it within a week or 10 days or something like that. So that, and that is because of that challenge, we have to be ready at all the times with the active uh, uh, what would I say, the ready storage of research, past research and evidence, so that immediately we can tell them that this will work and this will not work. And of course, the emphasis will be to use new technologies, whatever new technologies have come in this space, softwares, e-library, and the networking with the evaluation organizations of Government of India and other states, so that we can bring maximum output with the least efforts. And I think what we are trying to advocate, if we want to improve the efficiency of the different schemes by our evaluation, our first task at hand is to improve our efficiency also. And we must evaluate the process of evaluation also, how we are doing. So that's in a nutshell what we are and what we plan to do in future.
Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
sir.
Before I request Professor Ian to come, we just presented 2 states, and also we have DMO experience. So basically, in UP, it's largely done in-house, and they have a set of civil servants. DMO had that model until 2015, where most of the work was done by DMO staff itself. We used to be called as program evaluation office at the time, largely doing evaluations. But since 2015, there has been dramatic change in the way DMO is now organized. Full-time civil servants probably are only around 15 or 20%. Rest 80% are lateral hires who are on contractual basis. And we find this very, very encouraging, because we get probably some of the best talent, especially in new technologies like data analysis, data management, and so forth. And we also have Karnataka, which is hybrid, where there is outsourcing through empaneled institutions. So we have definitely the trend is towards outsourcing, getting more lateral entrance into the system to build the capacities. So with this, we'll come to our final panelist. Professor Ian Goldman is an international advisor in evaluation and evidence based at the University of Witwatersrand and Cape Town. He's joining us from Cape Town. He is an adjunct professor of the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance, University of Cape Town. He's also a board member of CIE and the South Africa M&E Association, and honorary research fellow at Human Science Research Council in South Africa. From 2011 to 2018, Professor Ian was head of evaluation and research and from 2017 to 18, Deputy Director General in the South Africa Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. It's interesting that this is one of the organizations which has almost similar mandates like Development Monitoring Evaluation Organization, for which I am the DG. He has a PhD from Graduate School of Public and Development Management, University of Witwatersrand, South Africa. With this, I request Professor Ian, floor is yours.
Right. Okay, so it's great to be with you all. I have been to India 2 or 3 times, but it's my first time to be part of an M&E discussion in relation to India. So it's great to be with you. So a bit of context. South Africa, we're a relatively new democracy. We had a very fragmented state during apartheid. And in 1995, this was amalgamated to create a semi-federal system with 9 provinces. Before 2009, M&E, there was no sort of national M&E system. There were a number of systems, primarily driven by National Treasury. But in 2009, with a new government, same party, but new government, a ministry and a department of planning and a ministry and department of planning of monitoring and evaluation were created. And these were amalgamated in 2014 into the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. And this represented a big change and a change in focus and emphasis on monitoring and evaluation. So in the left-hand box there, systems developed. Just to give you a flavor, I mean, a very wide range of systems have been developed, but one of the focuses has been around trying to focus on some priority outcomes, which were initially 12, then became 14, and are now 7, with a big focus on working across government to achieve progress in those outcomes. There's also a system of quarterly reporting against annual plans of the national and provincial departments, and these also reported to Parliament. There's a system of frontline service delivery monitoring, which has been established, which is done in collaboration with the provinces, with unannounced visits to facilities around the country, and a sort of a monitoring system and a tracking system of what's found in those facilities. There's a local government monitoring system that's been established. And then there's the system that I was responsible for, the National Evaluation System, which has national, provincial, and departmental evaluation plans. In the national evaluations, around $10 billion has been evaluated. It has a model of diagnostic evaluations prior to design, implementation evaluations during implementation of programs and policies, and outcome and impact as sort of more ex post evaluations. And they are primarily outsourced. Some of the lessons, there are forces which do not want to be monitored in government, and there's a compliance mindset, and it needs strong political will to push a monitoring and evaluation system, and one which really has impact. And we've seen that will department has changed according to how that will has been. It's important to establish institutionalized systems. I saw from UP that you mentioned ad hoc, not moving from ad hoc systems. So yeah, systems which can be institutionalized, and an area that still needs to be strengthened is the need to link monitoring and evaluation to planning and budgeting. Evaluation in particular is very culture related, because to do evaluation, you need to be prepared to face failure. You need to be prepared to look at the problems, understand what's going wrong, and see how to do better. And so for many countries, and perhaps many states in India, there's not an interest in that focus. And so evaluation is not something to be done everywhere. It's very important to focus on creating a learning culture, and one of the jobs I took on was as a sort of evidence advocate, and we set up a course for the top 3 levels of the public service, where we trained 350 of the top levels of the important, to try and create an environment where they would see the importance of monitoring and evaluation. And this was very helpful and led to some important evaluations being conducted that otherwise there was a degree of resistance. One of the things we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years has been transitions in heads of department and in governments causing wobbles, and DPME was significantly affected by that, and its effectiveness reduced. It's now coming back again, and we hope it'll get back to where it was. Another lesson is that it's important to have a variety of tools, and DPME is now looking at rapid evaluations, and that's an area I've been working on quite a lot. I was also interested in the figures on the return. We've actually done an evaluation of the evaluation system. Again, in UP, you mentioned that. And the rate of return that we found was between 7-to-1 and 13-to-1 on evaluations. That's what we came up with from our evaluation. So I look forward to further questions and discussion later.
Thanks, Professor Ian. I wish I have been here for last 2 years. I wish I had known about you 2 years back. There are so many things that probably DMEO can learn from the experiences at DPME, especially the way you have institutionalized, and also you have been handling with the transitions and also rebouncing back. And also the curriculum on evaluation and evidence that you must have generated to train the civil servants. Looks like there are lots of rich experiences in South Africa. I hope some of the material is on the web. I hope all those lessons either JPAL, 3IE can collate and put them and disseminate more. So with this, we will come to the discussion to be moderated by myself. So this is one place where I have some space to ask some questions. The first question is to Dr. Shalini. You know, although you have elaborated in a lot of detail in your introductory remarks, but I think Karnataka stands so exceptionally different in terms of the way evaluation has been institutionalized through a very strong entity, Karnataka Evaluation Authority, and everything has been so well standardized, and it's such a big lesson for not only India but many other parts, many other developing countries. So what are the factors that have significantly contributed to this strong institution building? And definitely there's a lot of scope for further strengthening. I'm sure you must be doing many of them. What are your plans for further strengthening of especially evaluation systems in Karnataka? Dr. Shalini.
Thank you. I think the first and foremost everywhere would be the political will. So the fact that, you know, the government decided, and governments all along have been allowing Karnataka Evaluation Authority to function as an independent authority is a very big strength. Secondly, I think the robust system that has been developed, the standardized, you know, procedures, then having the partners selection, very rigorous process for selection of partners, then the total transparency about it, then involvement of all the stakeholders, the department concerned for which the evaluation is happening. So right from the planning stage, they are involved, and that makes, you know, this whole thing very participatory, and therefore the resistance is much less. As far as future is concerned, I was listening to Amod. We have to look at, you know, the value for money kind of thing, and as Professor Ian said, the cost effectiveness, the rate of return. We have to look at those factors, and that's where I said the outcomes have to be, you know, measured in such a way that we are able to justify every penny that is being spent on any scheme of the government, so that the returns are very valuable or multiple times the amount invested. So we're now looking at coming out with some more changes, and I think in the next series we'll share about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Shani. Now I will request Dr. Chaya. You have been part of Karnataka Evaluation Authority. In a way, you have been there fundamentally, significantly contributing to that organization. This is more about a specific aspect of institutionalization. Yeah, we do all the organization evaluation, but there's a limit to government's capacity to do them, especially on large scale. So, although you have mentioned it in your presentation, can you further elaborate a little bit on role played by empaneled organizations for conducting evaluation, and how can government build capacities across the state so that they have a larger pool of organizations, which in turn helps in evaluating large number of programs? In fact, this is something that DMEO is itself struggling. We are looking for ways to empanel knowledge institutions and survey firms. Dr. Chaya, your insights would be really, really helpful.
Thank you, sir. And as you rightly said, that in-house capacity is very less, and therefore I think that from two angles, the evaluation through some empaneled organizations rather will be useful. One is definitely that we can have more evaluation studies, we can have more programs and schemes for evaluation, provide more inputs to the government for better policy formulation, program designs, and everything, etc. But second thing, during my experience, I found that we have a very, very rigorous process of even the selection of the organizations as well as empanelment of the organizations. At the stage of empanelment itself, we take all the precautions that only quality organizations enter into Karnataka Evaluation Authority. Now we have, we have a very scientific score given to the evaluation organizations. The documents are verified by the empanelment committee very strictly, and we have more focus on the technical side of the organization. That almost, you can say, 60 to 65% weightage is given to the technical aspects of evaluation. How many studies they have done, or evaluation studies they have done at national, international levels, and even also their local levels, because the local understanding at the micro level is also very important, and therefore we have also looked into that particular aspects, and of course the organization and everything. So we, while empaneling the organizations itself, we have a thorough presentation by the organizations also. We cross-check that to what extent the documents submitted by them are rather valid and all, and also what are their evaluation capacities, etc. And after that only we empanel them through the governing body approval to them, etc. And when we have a rather request for proposal for the evaluation studies, now I must share that really we are in a competitive structure. We are working with so many very good organizations coming for presentation. In fact, the tender evaluation committee, we have a robust criteria also for tender evaluation. So we have, the scores given, weightages given to their organizational strength. There are the CVs of the experts submitted for evaluation. Almost 50% weightage is given to them, and 50% weightage is given for their presentation of the technical proposal. How best they are in the evaluation of that particular project, and what are their technical capacities, what are their evaluation design, methodology, sampling processes, and their, we can say, the knowledge about the whole scheme, etc. So we have experts in the tender evaluation committee who are normally from that particular field. Suppose if a project is from the education field, we will definitely invite a well-known expert in the education field. And we have also the department also as a member of the evaluation team, but we have experts. Then we have the KEA additional chief evaluation officer as the chairperson of the committee. Now we have a e-tendering process, and we get the tenders through e-processing, and we have made the empanelment process as easy, as accessible as possible. It is throughout the year. The empaneled organizations can apply for the expression of interest for empanelment. And then quarterly, we take up the organizations for evaluation through, we can say, what is called as the empanelment evaluation committee, looking after into the whole documents and everything. Now, in addition to this, we said that some of the very reputed organizations, reputed institutions, may not rather come into a tendering process on the one hand, and also in the empanelment process. Of course, we have institutions like Institute for Social and Economic Change and others for in the empanelment process also. But many of the organizations like IMB and all may not be rather interested in the empanelment process and the whole thing. So what we have said is that we will have the collaborations with these institutions also. And even also here also we have framed clearly the guidelines. We have academic institutions, the state universities, the national and international universities associated with KEA, and also the research organizations. We say that we will have some very specific studies, research studies, some very, we can say, very deep involvement studies, which require deep expertise and all, can be done through these organizations. We
Okay,
ask
yeah.
submit documents.
Thanks, Dr. Shah. I think we are
Exactly.
running out of time. So thank you so much for elaborating so well. I think getting empaneling and contracting out is such a big challenge. It's such a big headwind against doing evaluation studies. I think there's so much to be learned from this experiences or the processes that government of Karnataka through KEA has set up. We congratulate state government of Karnataka for these achievements. Amod, I've seen your CV. You have worked closely with philanthropy and also civil society and NGOs in your various roles. So where does the state government look when it comes to role of civil society organizations in building robust M&D system? I know BMGF has very strong presence, closely working with state government. So what roles they could play which further strengthen the existing M&D system?
Yeah, so it is very interesting that when I said that the evaluation division was formed, there was this state level body formed headed by the chief minister, and it's called in Hindi Rajya Mulyankan Salahkar Parishad, State Evaluation Consultative Advisory Council. And it is interesting to see that it had two NGO representatives on this body headed by the chief minister. So I think in the state of UP, we have recognized the importance of the civil society in evaluation thing, because ultimately evaluation is like mirror, and civil society organizations are also like who are critique of the government. So but there is a danger also there that if you involve them too much, then the ruling party has problem with them. If you do not involve them, then you do not get the real picture. So I think there is a fine balance which needs to be made there. But I think formally we must have the representation of these organizations in any body, which number one, which decides which evaluations to do, or which decides the number of evaluation which have to be carried on, and number two also which sees the evaluation results of those evaluation studies and amends the scheme design. I think we need representatives from the civil society organizations for both, and they give the right kind of. And so we know that our studies match with what are the voices. And in case there is some disagreement, we can always test it out. So I do see a very important role for them, especially in UP, which is a like very big state, and sitting in Lucknow for a country like this is impossible without having grassroots organizations represented on the decision-making bodies.
Thank you, Amod. Really appreciate your response. Now coming to Professor Ian, though you have very much referred to in your opening remarks, can you talk a little bit about the national evaluation policy framework developed by Government of South Africa, which prescribes minimum standards for evaluation? What are the key elements of such a plan, and what are the lessons that India and other countries can learn from such a plan?
Well, so there's two things. I mean, there's the policy framework doesn't really set the minimum standards. We have a separate document on standards, and that is then interpreted into a scoring system which is used to rate all national evaluations when they've been done, to quality assess them. So, for example, when all of the national ones are taken to cabinet, and we can go to them and say it is rated and scored at this level, you can have confidence or in the findings. So but the National Evaluation Policy Framework does set the overall direction. The first policy framework was approved in 2011, and it describes the approach, the utilization focus which we took up. It describes some of the systems like national evaluation plans. It describes the types of evaluations which we're going to focus on. It seeks to build a common language around evaluation, because different evaluation people use all sorts of different terminology. And it sets out a sort of implementation framework about how the policy that would be implemented. But there's a separate thing, which is the National Evaluation Plan. And I wasn't sure whether you were referring to that or the policy.
I was referring to both of them. Maybe I got a little bit mixed up. Yeah, thank you.
So we do have a plan, a national plan, and that sets which evaluations will be done in the following 1 to 3 years. And in our case, we started off with doing 15 a year. They vary between 8 and 15 a year, and they're selected partly because departments volunteer them, and partly because they're felt to be strategic. They fit with the National Development Plan. They're large. We also have a minimum size for the National Evaluation Plan. And those ones are part funded by DPME and part funded by the departments concerned. And the evaluations are managed by DPME in collaboration with the department concerned. But they're also provincial evaluation plans. And there was an incipient system of departmental evaluation plans when I left, although I think that's one's been struggling a bit.
Thanks, Professor Ian, for elaborating further on the policy framework and the plans. We just have around 13 minutes, so we will need around 3 minutes for conclusion. So we just have around 10 minutes to take a number of questions from the audience. So we'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So we'll go by reverse, and one question that very short yes/no answer type question from Anthony Syriac. Does South Africa have a formal policy on evaluation? Professor Ian.
So we have one from 2011, and we can share it with the organizers, and an updated version which was done in 2019.
So coming to Amod, we have a question from Shweta Sharma. What kind of mechanisms can be used for assessing the actions taken on recommendations? So you have a lot of evaluations that are done. How do you ensure and assess the actions taken on recommendations?
I think, as I said, right now, whatever evaluations have been done, an ad hoc approach that we present those evaluations to the concerned ministry, and then they take I can tell you a few schemes which were redesigned. Like we had a scheme in sericulture, we had UP diversified agriculture support projects, then there were some education projects which were evaluated and modified. But I would admit that there is no formal mechanism and system to ensure that whatever recommendations are made are necessarily incorporated into the scheme design. It all depends on the recipient department. We give the recommendation to them, and then the recipient department's minister and the chief minister who decide. Because sometimes what happens when the studies are done and the findings are not good and the studies are leaked in press, so then there is another mechanism comes into place that we try to defend that the scheme, that the evaluation was not proper and things like that. And no, actually the scheme is running well. So so that is also one factor. So what we try to do is to present as much in-house as possible without not a very negative picture comes out in media. We also have to make sure, on the other hand, bringing out the deficiencies in the scheme so that it is refined. So it's a double-edged sword. But the short answer to that question is that there is no formal mechanism.
But I can add.
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
please do.
You see, we have this mechanism where we put up the important action to be taken to the chief secretary. So we have monthly meeting of secretaries, and we have this system of sharing the outcomes and recommendations. And individually also, we send the file to the chief secretary, and chief secretary one-to-one has a meeting with the concerned secretary. So that influences a great deal. And I have seen that 100% of our recommendations, have been accepted.
Thank you. So this is a clear indication of the benefits of strong institutionalization, and definitely, as I said, Karnataka again is a gold standard in every dimension of evaluation. So with this, there's a very acute question from Saloni Agarwal. She's from Department of Land Resource and Geospatial Cell. And her question is, I am supposed to take up evaluation of Department of Land Resources Geospatial Cell. What should be my approach as a beginner? Dr. Chaya, you have so many years of experience. What would be your guidance to a beginner like Saloni?
Yeah, definitely, sir. See, when we begin with, I think we have to review the past studies and evaluations, and also the coverage of the whole geospatial system in which we are going to apply this. And I suggest to Saloni that you have before you the mapping of the whole geospatial coverage of a particular parameter and all. Now assess the basic parameters that are involved, that are required for your assessment. I was not very clear about what really you wanted to assess with, either agriculture or we can say the other schemes or education or something like that. But any scheme or any parameter you take, or even a census data you want to assess, like then you can have the geospatial special parameters related to that particular, develop a terms of reference, develop the design of the study, and on the basis of that you can bring out very good results, that where is the concentration, where is the decentralization, or where is rather we can say the follow-up is required, deficiencies and gaps and everything. So that can be other.
Let me add, because we have an excellent geographical information system based planning inputs. So what we do is we take the norms. For example, an ambulance is required to cover 10 kilometers radius. So geospatially, if you look at the locations of those ambulances, are they at an equidistant, thing of 10 kilometers radius? And secondly, the population intensity. So many lakh population it should cover. So wherever it is not. So we've done this even without a formal evaluation study, using a GIS tool, saying that how best the ambulances should be distributed, or how best the schools should be distributed. And we came out with a finding that 1,000 odd schools should be closed because they are repeating. They are unnecessarily too closely located as against the norms. So there are norms of every departmental, every scheme. If we can take that as a spatial distribution, you can really make a lot of difference to the policy.
Thank you, Dr. Chaya, as well as Dr. Rajneesh. We have one final, we just have around 6 minutes, so one final question and then a few minutes for one concluding remark, a quick concluding remark from each of the panelists. So this quickly, Ian, we have a question from Arjit Das. He says how researchers can be involved during the beginning of implementation rather than end of it. Can we think of concurrent monitoring and evaluation? Did South Africa handle this challenge, and any suggestions?
I mean, it's a good question. We don't have any what are sometimes called developmental evaluations, which are in government, where evaluators are involved through a whole process of implementation. We have evaluations which are done early, for example, what we call diagnostic evaluations, and also implementation evaluations, which can be done early within a program process. But we haven't had, the only other example would be that there have been occasions with impact evaluations where they're designed at the outset, and researchers have then been involved at the outset to try help design some of the indicators. But that's really the only examples. It's not common, but it is a nice idea.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So we just have around 5 minutes time, and before we close, for your closing remarks, I want each of you, of the esteemed panelists, to give us one headline suggestion for strengthening monitoring and evaluation ecosystem that is feasible, actionable, that India and other developing countries can adopt. So again, I'll start reverse, Professor Ian.
So, well, I mean, I'm very impressed to hear what Karnataka and UP have done, and I think one can always improve, and there's ways to continue. I think the challenge of improving the learning culture in government so that evaluation becomes part of everyday practice is something that's an ongoing battle, and ensuring that recommendations actually do get implemented. But I think there's lots of discussions that can happen going on from here, and I certainly look forward to further communication going forward.
Amod?
Yeah, so I think my only thought at this moment is that every crisis brings an opportunity, and current COVID crisis has reduced the availability of money to a great extent. So when you have lesser money, you have to spend it in a better manner. Otherwise, you will fail miserably. So I think next 6 months or 1 year present us a huge opportunity of building these M&E systems so that we can improve the efficiency of the government expenditure. And if we are not able to do it now, I don't think we'll be able to do it so easily in future. So it's much easier doable now.
Dr. Chaya?
I really feel that this type of knowledge platforms are really very important for knowledge sharing, gaining the experiences at all. And I must say that during the pandemic and in the post-pandemic period, we will have more and more necessity of M&E systems to rather maximize the development outcomes and see that the pandemic situation rather is able to overcome and provide a safe and good livelihood to the people. And therefore, I say that such knowledge sharing platforms are really very useful, and I look forward for such platforms in future also. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shalini?
I'm looking at more of an open source evaluation system where we have an open data platform, and we are now expecting more and more analysts and researchers to come and say, okay, we would like to investigate, and we've got very good response from even universities abroad, and they have taken our data without privacy being compromised. That is one part. Second, I'm looking at synergizing the entire database of all the beneficiaries and the works that happen with every penny that gets spent. And I'm looking at the outcome in terms of how many lives have improved in their quality with the package of services. So it can be various packages, but in the whole whole year, how the different services have made a difference to the life of that person, and relatively speaking, which one was more effective. This will then lead us to spend our money in the most effective schemes than just spreading it too thin. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we had a number of audience participants who have asked questions: Kapil, Vatika, Vaishvi, Jogender, Shweta, Gunjan, Amarinder Reddy, and others. So we don't have time. We just have 1 minute and don't have time. But we will definitely respond to you if you have shared your email addresses. So, DMU is deeply committed to strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems across the country. And we know and we want to unleash the power of partnerships, both international as well as national, because the wisdom is all across. And with this internet age, we can curate and provide right linkages. We look forward to organizing more. We would like to be the intermediating organization and build facilitate the linkages across. Definitely, given this COVID crisis, as Amod has mentioned, we have to take opportunity and really rebuild and strengthen our monitoring and evaluation system so that we truly strengthen and make sure that every dollar, every rupee of public expenditure delivers the outcomes that it was supposed to in the most efficient manner. So with this, I would like to thank you, first the panelists for sharing their insights, my DMU partnership team, colleagues for doing a lot of groundwork in organizing this seminar, then DMU senior team for support and guidance, and JPAL and CLEAR I mentioned right at the beginning for this initiative for organizing. And last but not the least, audience across the world, across the globe for attending and actively participating through your questions. So thank you all, and till we see you all next time, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.